William G. Kaltenbach was born to Joseph and Catherine in Wheeling, West Virginia on February 13, 1893. When he was 3 years old, William's father died suddenly, and he was raised by his mother in this small house at 209 East 12th Street. On March 23, 1913, William's girlfriend, Ethel Claire Devereux, gave birth to his son William Jr. William was only 20 years old, and he found a job as the assistant of the Western and Southern Life Insurance Company, and provided a decent life for his family. But in September of 1917, he decided to enlist in the Army. William was sent to Camp Lee on September 20, 1917, and became a sergeant with Battery C of the 314th Field Artillery. According to the history of the 314th Field Artillery, a book which you can find in the description below, in a very short space of time, we were assigned permanent quarters, shot in the arm, issued clothing, a tentative battery organization was formed, and we were being taught in the intricacies of squads right before we realized what it was all about. We were fortunate in the formative period of our battery in having officers who had at once the implicit confidence of all and the ability to administer those functions that go to make for a good organization. The tentative soon developed into the permanent organization. Non-commissioned officer schools were launched, various athletic teams formed, and a spirit de corps rapidly developed. In fact, in one short month we had buckled down to the military game in dead earnest. It was here in boot camp that William mailed his first postcard home to his mother. It read simply, January 19th, 1918. Love to all, Bill. After roughly 5 months of training at Camp Lee, at 1 a.m., Friday, May 24, 1918, the battery was formed on the Battery Parade with full packs, overseas bound. Marching to the station, we boarded a train for Lambert's Point, Virginia, arriving at 8:10 a.m. and going aboard at once. We were berthed on the SS America, and on Sunday, May 26 at noon, we left the pier, moving down to Hampton Roads, and at 5:20 p.m. we headed out into the Atlantic. We were accompanied by a battleship well beyond the Capes, and late next day were met by boats out from Hoboken. Our convoy now consisted of 10 transports and 1 destroyer. The voyage over was uneventful, the weather fine, the sea unusually quiet. The days were spent in dull routine, lifeboat drills and schools. The mess was very bad. 4 days out from the French coast, we were met by 6 American destroyers. Daybreak, the morning of June 8, 1918, the coast of Brittany was sighted, and at 9 a.m. the same day, anchor was dropped into the harbor of Brest. By the beginning of August, just 2 months later, Battery C had become experts, and our drivers had succeeded in making French horses understand mule skinners' English. We were now sufficiently advanced in our training to enter a French school of artillery fire. On August 8th, the battery was sent off to Camp de Meucon for training on the French 75mm gun. But before they left, Sergeant Kaltenbach quickly mailed these postcards to his mother, uncle, and sister. August 8th, 1918. Mother dearest, everything coming along just excellent. Please do not worry, as there is no cause to do so. Sure hope you are well. Think of you always. Remember you in all my prayers. Will write a big long letter this week. Your loving son, Bill. Dear Uncle, about all I am doing is horseback riding. Feeling excellent and getting along okay. Sure hope you are well. Lovingly, Bill. Dear sister, think of you often. I am just feeling fine. Hope all at home are well. Give my best to all I know. A big letter for you this week. Don't worry, as I am getting along excellent. Love and kisses to all, Bill. Picking back up again with the regimental history, it notes that on August 8, 1918, we left Reading, moving overland to Camp de Meucon, a distance of 70 kilometers, arriving there Sunday afternoon, August 11th. We were quartered in barracks, had sheds for the horses, and an ideal gun park. Here we were to get our first actual experience firing the French 75mm gun. And it was also here that William mailed another postcard home. August 19th, 1918. Dear Sister, I think of you often. Sorry to hear that you are losing weight. I am actually getting fat, about 160 pounds. Not bad, is it? I have Clara beat now. In your prayers, remember Bill. Love and kisses to all. Bill. Special schools were conducted here for both officers and enlisted men. The firing battery went on the range almost daily. The march to and from the range was long and dusty, but the satisfaction gained through the knowledge that we were fast becoming efficient artillerymen compensated for all of this. Under the supervision of the French instructing officers, September 5th, 6th, and 7th were devoted to a brigade problem, simulating as near as possible actual conditions at the front. This was the culmination of the course at Mukon. The 155th Field Artillery Brigade had qualified. We were now ready for the big adventure. On Friday, September 13th at 2:30 p.m., we left Camp de Mukon for the city of Vannes, a march of 9 kilometers, where we entrained for the front on the 8 Chavez 40 Hommes. On September 16th at 3 a.m., we detrained at Longueville, a small village beyond Bar-de-Luc, marching from there to Tamoiz, a distance of about 3 kilometers, where we took cover in some woods. We were held as Corps Reserve for the St. Mihiel drive, but due to the success of this operation, did not go into action. And on the evening of September 16th, we started on the first leg of a long march to the Meuse-Argonne sector. Long forced night marches, followed by frantic camouflaging of material upon arrival at our destination at daybreak, with cannoneers marching under full packs and guns and caissons loaded with camouflage, telephone equipment, and fire control instruments, wore out both men and horses. And when at 11 a.m., September 20th, we pulled into Camp Galini, we were thankful for the much-needed rest that followed, while a preliminary reconnaissance was made of the battery's position, just south of La Morte-Holmnay, or Dead Man's Hill. Our infantry joined us here, and the 80th Division was now together. About 6 p.m., September 23rd, the battery left Camp Galini to occupy its position. Fair progress was made for about 22 kilometers, and the roads were good until we reached the vicinity of Montseville. At this point, the road became so congested that it was practically impossible to continue our advance. A solid double line, at least 2 kilometers in length, of French trucks, tractors, and tanks, American artillery, ammunition trains, ambulances, and ration wagons, forced us to halt. The road at this point was under enemy observation, and with fast approaching daylight, it was obvious that we could not reach our position under cover of darkness. It was then decided to turn back into the woods just south of Montseville, where we spent the day. In the evening, we again took the road, and without difficulty reached our position about 9 p.m. The guns were immediately laid, camouflage erected, and except for the necessary guard, the firing battery turned in for the night, utilizing an old trench of the 1916 Battle of Verdun. Next day was spent in an effort to get enough ammunition to fire our initial barrage. The supply was irregular. The shell had to be carried quite a distance, and it was only with much labor that we secured enough to serve the battery. By nightfall, we were ready. At 11:30 p.m. on September 25th, the entire horizon in our rear, as far as the eye could reach, burst into flame. Thousands of artillery weapons of all calibers hurled forth their death-dealing missiles, and the air was filled with the incessant rumble of the big guns and the constant screeching of the GI cans Berlin-bound. At 5:30 the morning of September 26, 1918, the battery opened fire the first time against a real enemy, in the Meuse-Argonne offensive. Doughboys from the 320th Infantry went over under the protection of our barrage. At 9 a.m. we received word that our barrage was a success. We were ordered forward to Hill 281, an advance of 7 kilometers. On this march we began to have our first doubts about the Allied air service, for just as we were coming into position, 2 Boche planes, unmolested, swooped down on the column, bracketed us with bombs, and made the air sing with machine gun bullets. One of those machine gun bullets struck Sergeant William Kaltenbach in the chin and continued downwards, lodging in his chest. He fell to the muddy road and was quickly carried to the rear. 1 month later, in the October 23rd edition of the Wheeling Intelligencer, his death was announced. Sergeant William G. Kaltenbach, a well-known wheeling boy and the son of Mrs. Joseph Kaltenbach of 209 East 12th Street, died of wounds received September 26th in the big drive against the Germans in northern France. The sad official information was received yesterday by his mother. A letter was also received from Lieutenant William Michaels, of the same company, who is also a wheeling boy, in which he stated that Sergeant Kaltenbach had been wounded in the chest and had been immediately removed to an evacuation hospital. Later yesterday afternoon, Mrs. Kaltenbach received a letter from her son, saying he'd been wounded, but was improving and expected to be removed to a base hospital soon. He enclosed a German note taken from a Hun on the battlefield. Sergeant Kaltenbach was among the first of the wheeling boys to leave for training, having departed September 20th, 1917 for Camp Lee. He was a member of Battery C, 314th Field Artillery. Last May he left for overseas service, and on September 17th went out for his first real fighting against the Germans. The community of Wheeling, West Virginia was deeply distraught by this news, none more so than his mother, who had just received a letter from him and a favorable report from his officers. She was certain that a serious mistake had been made by the intelligencer, and the very next day a retraction was published. Sergeant William G. Kaltenbach, wounded, but is living. The report that Sergeant William G. Kaltenbach, son of Mrs. Joseph Kaltenbach of 209 East 12th Street, had died of wounds received in the big drive of northern France, is incorrect. The young man was badly wounded September 26th, and is slowly recovering, according to the latest report received from one of his officers, and also a letter from him. The report stated that he expected to be removed to a base hospital shortly. Sergeant Kaltenbach entrained from here for Camp Lee in September 1917, and was a member of Battery C, 314th Field Artillery, at the time he was wounded. William wasn't dead, but he was seriously wounded. Part of his jaw and chin had been completely torn away by the bullet, and doctors had to reconstruct it with one of his ribs. But after extensive surgeries, he spent the next 4 months recovering in a French hospital. January 6th, 1919. Mother dear, here I am in sunny France, just convalescing. Oranges and flowers growing profusely over this land of sunshine. Just wish you were here to help enjoy this wonderful scenery. The old Mediterranean is just wonderful. I'm in Class B too. Expect to get back to the States soon. Lovingly, Bill. On the same day, he also wrote a letter to his sister. Sister dear, visited this place today. Had a very enjoyable time. We are located right on the Mediterranean Sea. It would be impossible to even try to tell you of this wonderful place. We'll get a letter out to the folks tomorrow. Love to all, Bill. On March 4th, 1919, William finally returned to the United States and received an honorable discharge from the Army at Camp Lee. Besides a slight scar on his chin and a few missing teeth, he had recovered from his wounds remarkably well, and he received a warm welcome home. A few years later, Walter moved to Washington, Pennsylvania, where he found work with another insurance company, and finally married his longtime girlfriend, Ethel Deveray, on May 20th, 1922. William G. Kaltenbach passed away from pneumonia in O'Hara, Pennsylvania, on October 25th, 1935.